the all things a bit not less prepared, let's say. So I didn't prepare a PowerPoint, but I tried to develop a bit a talk. I hope it will not be too long or too short to ill adapt. But anyway, realizing and hearing to all the speakers this afternoon, maybe it's relevant. I just mentioned, even if we will have probably other opportunities to interact on that, but that I'm coordinating a project under the aegis of the Internal Federation of Catholic University, and the project is called New Humanism in the Age of or in the Time of Neuroscience and Artificial Intelligence. And it's precisely connected with many things we heard, because the idea is to reflect among academics, but also and mainly maybe to put that reflection at the service of more global exploration of what it means to be human in the age, in particular, of artificial intelligence, because we believe it's a key question, and it's also, and maybe first and foremost, a political question that should be discussed with the help of experts, but as a political question that involves more than just experts and technocrats. So to be able to regulate, probably we need also to reinforce the awareness and the capacities of orientation that people can have on what it means to be human, and then how AI can serve what is the most human we would like to achieve. Anyway, but today, as I shared with you, I was more willing to discuss with the cap or the hat of the philosopher that I am, the philosopher of science, epistemologist. And it's very close to what Father John discussed in at least in the spirit. I was willing to come back on the manner we can approach the notion of decision, and to discuss the extent to which it is applicable or not to machines. So maybe I will be a little bit more permissive than what the previous philosopher, Father John, I think, said, but the spirit is the same. And the question is, can we really talk about machine decision making? Is it equivalent to human decision making? Can we delegate? What does it mean to delegate decision making to machines? With what type of responsibility regimes? So all of this is a bit the topic, but my point is, I guess we at least here all share the intuition that, of course, obviously, it's not the same. We have free will, we can decide, but machine cannot. Machines, they're machines and they cannot decide. But my point is, I think there is not only, but in particular, epistemological work to do to give strength to those intuitions. I'm not sure we can be too confident into the fact that those intuitions, they're strong enough and they're sufficient in themselves to ensure proper discussions of the topic and proper regulation of it also. And in particular, I'd like to point out, I wouldn't even say it's a traditional epistemology, but it's probably a received epistemology that in between the lines, it means that we believe science, especially natural science, exact science, hard sciences, they're relying on neutral methods, and they are the true way of producing knowledge because they delivers truths, and this entitles sciences like that, because they have access to privileged method of knowledge building, to oppose to common sense intuitions, opinions, and to correct them if there is an opposition. If there is a divergence between an intuition I have and what science is saying, then I should abide and correct my intuitions. And this is a bit, let's say, we have to be careful with that, because phrased that way, it means that in the background, we're working with something saying that the intuition that it's obvious we have free will, it's obvious machines can't decide, should be backed, confirmed, or at least confronted with the serious knowledge that science can provide. And this was already, if you're aware of the details of the discussion, but of the discussion of Turing in 1950 with the imitation game. The idea was that consciousness, free will, thinking for machines, it's not something you can ask directly. It's undefined on a scientific point of view. And what you can do is look at behaviors. and the serious talk should be based on comparing behaviors, and on that point, we can say now what we are able to make machines do. It's very impressive, and just based on outputs or outcomes, you might, if you have only that, then okay, it's not clear, and in itself, I think it's a problem to accept that way of phrasing the stuff. Like if you have a debate and someone want to contest the idea that we have free will and machines don't, they will ask, please show me an example of something human can do, an outcome it can produce, and then the machine cannot. And it's not that easy to be sure that the machine won't be able to, especially with machine learning and deep learning. That is almost a technology that the very moment you have examples of what you want to achieve, you can try to make the machine reproduce it. So it's very dangerous, that tactic, and we see the result now. If we are apply basically the idea of the Turing test, it's convincing in terms of conversation. The machines, they're convincing. So what should we do? And here, I think a good answer is, at least a necessary answer, sorry, is to look at the epistemological dimension. And in particular, I would like to say that like dualism retreats, saying, of course, it's obvious machines, they don't have free will because they don't have a soul, they don't have a spirit, seen as in a framework where you have two kinds of furnitures in the world, the matter and the spirit, for instance. First, I'm not sure, but I'm not theologian, that it's totally Christian. But more than that, it's a weak strategy. It's a weak strategy, and Turing was already discussing that, saying, after all, you're talking about something we can't see, so why God could not give a soul to machines if the machines are the right stuff of organization, right type of organization. Anyway, I'll return to that a bit later, but I think we have to, it's already too much affecting that type of strategy. And so I think, on the contrary, we really have to look at, and I will say it that way, but we will dig in what it means epistemologically speaking. We have to look at the matter. We have to look at what we can see, and compare things at that level, and look at the entity that is doing the job, and to also say, okay, the output is good, but how do you arrive to the output? And this is meaningful or not? And then here, of course, it's a bit the ground of our intuition. We say computers, they're miniaturized mechanics. The Father John was inquiring about grounds to think that. I think we can even tie computers to the invention of writing, like the very moment you manage to create symbols, you can use your writings, your symbols, and make automata that move them, and from step to steps you can arrive to computers miniaturizing, making things less visible, but the principle would be here. And then, of course, returning to decision making, yes, a computer can do things more than a more simple system, because a computer or a computing machine can have internal states that makes it able to react differently if the internal state is different to similar inputs. But then we would say, look at biology, it's far more complex. Bodies, they're different. Organisms, life, it's a very different type of things. Not working on inertia also, but not for the same reasons. And here, I think the idea is good, but more epistemological work is mandatory to secure that type of talks, especially because it's not that obvious. When you look, like, for instance, Geoffrey Hinton or other people, they're framing the control problems in terms of machines. They're comparable systems to us, and they're more intelligent. And if they become more intelligent, how do we control us as a less intelligent system, a more intelligent one? And this means that we have accepted that we are comparable systems, at least on some aspects. And this has been analyzed notably by Daniel Andler in France. But there is a kind of perspective saying, well, basically, a computer, a human body, they're physical systems. And because they're physical systems, at the end of the day, all of this is atoms. Sure, different types of organization, but atoms or quarks or whatever is the ultimate stuff you recognize to be the stuff that is the real substance of matter. And so it could be also another type of ontology. That's not even the problem. You could say everything is information and information processing. And so everything, organism, computers can be seen as information processors. And if you do that, if you go there, it's less obvious that we can defend the specificity of the humans because all of this is physical systems and it's more complicated. And for instance, today, on right on the spot, many people argue, based a bit on a kind, I wouldn't say it's a materialism, I think it's a physicalism, and a very reductive one, but they argue that because of what we see of physics and of atoms, free will does not exist. Free will is impossible because it's determinism or for other reasons connected. I don't want to dig too much into that, but this is highly powerful and consequential then, because if free will does not exist, or if you don't defend enough the intuition attacked by that type of use of scientific results, that free will does not exist, then you should not have retributive justice. You should have only restorative justice or something like this. So it has a lot of consequences that has to be looked up front. So yes, there is behind that. It's not even a problem with physics in itself. It's a problem of the place you grant to the different sciences, the different talk. And here there is, because of a kind of very bad epistemology, but a very received and widespread one, you have a kind of the idea that the good science, it produces an absolute conception of the world, describing the absolute stuff that there is. And so there is only one serious discourse. So for instance, and here you can see why people that they're tempted to retreat to dualism or things like this, because if you talk with a scientific approach about love, about choice, about what happens in the brain when, and if this is talking about love, choice, anything like this, then you distract somehow our way of talking about love and choice and things like this, because you integrate those stuff into the absolute conception. It talks also about that, and then you're screwed. You can't talk in a different way about that. And then, so it's very problematic, because even if you say if it is hormones, yes, but hormones, they are at the end of the day molecules, and molecules, they are atoms, and so you exhaust a bit what could be said. But this should be interrogated in it's not like saying the only strategy to defend against a kind of appropriation of the important talk we would like to have on free will and on things like this, especially defending our basic intuitions. It's not the only way to try to say physics don't talk about love, don't talk about choice. It's not the only possible way, and it's probably a weak one. But then we might also try to look at that idea that there is a super powerful way of creating knowledge that creates truths that deserves to be seen as a kind of absolute conception of the world, describing the ontology of the matter, for instance, or things like this. I hope I'm understandable a bit, but I'll be available to answer a question if necessary. But first, the idea that there is a divide and a division of labor between knowledge and scientific knowledge on one side, and then the rest of the stuff, and if science talk about it, it belongs to science, natural science itself. It's not that obvious for many reasons. But first, about free will, for instance, many people, they talk about free will in terms of, does physics warrant a deterministic or an anti-deterministic view of the world? And this would be the ultimate that there is to say about free will, because if there is determinism, free will is kind of not existing. And if there is not determinism, then you can think free will. But it's an illusion. And that's Mario De Caro that presented something very clever about that. He said, but we don't care about that because if it's determinism, maybe you can't have choice, but if it's undeterminism, you don't have choice either because undeterminism, it's pure chance. And pure chance is not decision, it's just hazard. So it's orthogonal to the question of how to conceive free will, those debates, for large part. But more than that, and that's my, let's say, cap of the epistemologist, there is no absolute method of knowledge that would give the domains it applies to, you can apply it to, an absolute superiority to anything else. Like it's superior to intuitions in any the very moment there is a conflict with common sense, with basic intuitions, then it's science that is right. This is an illusion. There is nothing like that. Science in itself relies on, for a part, on common sense and intuitions, and so things are far more complicated than that. And to make things simple and put in a nutshell, basically, how do you produce knowledge? By wondering about the manner I arrived at my conclusions. Are they solid enough? And within solid enough, of course, you can say in some domains, it's about doing experiments, it's about doing mathematics, doing statistics, but it's a way of getting convinced that what you say is good. And there are many other ways to do that. And so it's a far more open approach of how to combine the different discourses that comes from science and from somewhere else that we should apply. Like, for instance, okay, maybe physics tells interesting stuff, but biology too. And physics is not maybe not more an absolute conception than biology or than something else. So if you think you did your works seriously in physics, and it's up to physicians to tell us that, but then what physics says is interesting. But then that's it. And then if biologists, they do their job good in a good way too, what biology tells us, it's also interesting to take at face value. And then the same goes for psychology, for everything, for any disciplinary approach, and more broadly for any attempt at saying stuff that deserves to be recognized as interesting stuff, as knowledge, as something that is valid. And so this allows for a kind of liberalized strategy where, and I really think we should do that, biology and neurology, they're natural science that if they are taken properly, they're allies of the proper understanding of and respectful understanding of what free will could be and what is a machine, what is a human. And then the idea would be, okay, maybe we will have to revise some of our basic intuitions, but we have to do it for good reasons. Because first, the strategy is to say, what are the systems I know take decision? Humans. Then I can ask physics to tell me what is human. Okay, they will tell me there are atoms, things like this. But then I ask biology, I ask neurology. And maybe physics can't tell me really, don't give me a framework to approach the difference between a computer and a human. It's more than, they're more pointing the similarities. But biology tells us that what we can see, what we can study from the perspective of natural sciences in those systems that are allegedly comparable, they're very different types of things. Very different types of things. And if you're not physicalist, if you accept the insights from physics, but you also accept the insights from any other knowledge endeavor that is done with seriousness, then you can work with biology too. And this won't screen off or won't make it illegitimate talks from psychology, talks from theology, talks from whatever talks that is done seriously. And what is something serious? It's open. We can discuss that. But it's not like physics is serious, natural science, they are serious, and the rest is less serious. It's more complex than that. And if we accept this, then we can even use physics to say, okay, maybe we're not sure through physics what is the difference between humans and computers, but at least we know that computers, they're almost integrally unless you use wetware or weird stuff like some people are developing, like trying to make computers with neurons or things like this. But regular computers, let's say, they're totally inertial machines. And this is, we learned that from physics, and we even, they're not, they can't, let's say, biology and many other disciplines, they make very obvious that human, they can sidestep. And they sanction that intuition that humans, they can sidestep and say, okay, things are like this, but they could be different, and I choose to do differently. And this is rooted for a part in life, maybe in many other things that I don't master, theological, spiritual stuff. But what we are sure, thanks to physics, is that computers, they don't do that. And physics even helps us to ensure that a computer behaves in a totally controlled way. And we know that things are so small that sometimes there are some noise, and you check when there are a deviation, you redo the computation to be sure. So really here we have a clear cut, but we have to do a very deep epistemological work to be able to give its right place to all the disciplines, understand how they can interact and connect without necessarily conflicting right away. And this is a difficult work. But then if we do that, we can return to basic institution that we can strengthen, that we can defend, that we can cultivate. And then, of course, it's important because then we can say, I wouldn't say we shouldn't use decision for machines, but what we should do is to remember that when we say that, we don't talk about sidestepping, which is the heart of the creativity, the basic creativity human can do, sidestepping. And so we can't really delegate decision making in that sense to AI. What we do, we remove any decision making and we replace that by automation, mechanisms. And so we may use decision makings for machines, but we have to remind it's not in the complete sense. And then, as Father John, and it will be my conclusion, Father John said, it's important to not project. If we use the term, at least remember, we shouldn't project what we mean when we apply it to humans on machines. But more than that, there is a danger behind that, that is to reduce what we do to what we can coin and understand in the terms of what the machines do. And this would be even more damaging because we would reduce our thinking space to only reacting in proper way with internal states or computational models of decision making. That would be even more dangerous than projecting in the other sense on machines what we're doing. And anyway, so the important is to make room for seriously talking about, but also seriously being sensitive to and reacting to genuine basic human creativity, that ability to sidestep that is probably tightly connected to biology, that is very definitional of what it means to be human and of any stuff about responsibility and so on. Okay, I'm very sorry. I hope it was a bit understandable and not too long. I had to prepare this in not long time enough. I would have loved to say yes, I will participate earlier and to have more time to prepare, but okay, I hope it was useful.